February 28, 2026. In the middle of indirect negotiations between Washington and Tehran, while diplomats were still busy arranging words across the negotiating tables in Muscat and Doha, the White House chose a different path. After having attacked Iran earlier that summer, right in the midst of the talks, it had promised to respect the diplomatic process from then on. Yet, despite that promise, it struck the negotiating table for a second time. Tomahawk cruise missiles, launched from US warships stationed in the northern Arabian Sea and from regional bases, flew with the precise coordinates of a single target: the residence of the leader of the Islamic Revolution of Iran, Ayatollah Khamenei. A secondary target, perhaps, was the meeting of Iran's Supreme Defense Council, where senior military commanders had gathered to coordinate the country's defense. These attacks, carried out without US congressional authorization and in violation of all international norms, effectively plunged the United States of America, alongside the Israeli regime, into a full-scale war with Iran. A war that had neither the approval of the UN Security Council nor the awareness or support of global public opinion. It appeared that Trump, under pressure from the Epstein scandal, was seeking to ignite a major conflict in West Asia as an escape route. Tehran, calling the strike an act of state terrorism, shifted its strategy from diplomacy to maximum deterrence. The first step was to target all American economic interests across West Asia. At the center of this deterrence stood one of the lifelines of the global economy: the Strait of Hormuz. This brought the strait and its developments back into the spotlight of major international media. I've been making military documentaries for more than 20 years. Since 2007, I've traveled through this region and witnessed firsthand the importance of this vital artery. What you see in this documentary is the result of my archival research and field observations. Hormuz, the story of a strait. In the heart of West Asia lies a 167-kilometer maritime choke point that holds the pulse of the world economy. This is the Strait of Hormuz, the only gateway from the Persian Gulf to the Indian Ocean. The strait is not merely a geographic location, it's a full-fledged geopolitical equation. Alongside Bab-el-Mandeb and Malacca, the Strait of Hormuz is the third most critical maritime trade route in the world. At its entrance, two official corridors have been defined, each carrying strategic weight in the balance of power. The northern corridor is the backbone of maritime traffic and the route for giant oil tankers. It passes north of Abu Musa Island. an island that serves as Iran's monitoring station over this passage. Ships in this corridor travel very close to Iranian territorial waters. The southern corridor, however, plays a secondary role today. Controlled by Oman, it's mostly used by local boats, and before 1900 was the main route for pirate activity.
ما آب بین المللی در خلیج فارس نداریم.
آب ایرانه.
ما آبراه بین المللی داریم. این از تو در واقع آبهای ما عبور میکنه. تو جزایر ما عبور میکنه. آبراه بین المللی. اشتباهی که امریکایی‌ها میکنن خیال میکنن اینجا آب بین المللی است. اینجا فلات قاره است. آبهایی که کمتر از عمق 200 متر باشه یا ادامه خشکی‌های یک مملکت در زیر آب را که عمق آن کمتر از 200 متر باشه بهش میگن فلات قاره. تو فلات قاره هر آنچه که زیر هست در میارن مشترک بین دو. ببین الان فروزان مال ماست، مرجان مال عربستانه، مشترک. چاهای فارس جنوبی بخشش مال ماست، بخشش شاهین و ماهین و اینا مال قطره. اینا مشترکه. این یعنی چی داریم به ما میگه؟ یعنی شما آب بین المللی وجود نداره.
یا ماست
یا مانو یا اوبره.
Here is the Portuguese fort on Qeshm Island, and these are the remains of the Portuguese fort on Hormuz Island. On Larak Island, the same fort can be seen. The three islands, that is, Larak, Hormuz, and Qeshm, are positioned around the strait in this formation. A triangle that once gripped the lifeblood of Persian Gulf trade on one side and the route to India on the other.
اون از اون ور دنیا برداشته اومده در خلیج فارس. خلیج فارسی که نه نفت داشته نه گاز داشته اون زمان. شما 1508 میلادی
چی داشته باشه؟
هیچی نبوده دیگه. اینجا که منطقه چیزی نبوده. اما اینجا یک آبراه مهم تجاری بوده.
The sensitive point in this equation is the position of the three islands, Abu Musa, the Greater Tomb, and the Lesser Tomb. They sit exactly between the two corridors. Abu Musa lies on the northern edge of the southern corridor and adjacent to the northern corridor. The Tomb Islands, like sentinels, overlook all routes of passage.
یه تنگه است. جزیره توم بزرگ. جزیره توم کوچیک. نزدیکش. بو موسی. اینجا ساحل ماست. مثلا اینجا لنگ است. این لنگ است. بین مثلثی رو تشکیل میدن. عمیق‌ترین جای خلیج فارس
اینجا کریدور رفته.
اینجاست.
درسته.
یک کریدور از این وره
برگشته.
یک کریدور از این ور برمیگرده. یعنی توم بزرگ. اگر شما اینو از دست بدید، تنگی هرمز از دست بدید.
In reality, the Strait of Hormuz is governed between this triangle and the triangle of Larak, Qeshm, and Hormuz. In the 17th century, the Portuguese occupied these islands. They built forts here and executed part of the local population with a device resembling a guillotine to force the rest into forced labor. That guillotine is now preserved as a symbol of those times in the remains of the Portuguese fort on Iran's Hormuz Island. I am here in the heart of these 6 islands to begin a story rarely told in history. The year is 1904. Without firing a single shot, British warships occupied Iran's three islands: Abu Musa, the Greater Tomb, and the Lesser Tomb. The southern sheikhs gathered under the flag of the empire, and Britain seized the throat of the Persian Gulf. The pirates of the southern parts of the Persian Gulf were transformed into the trucial states under British protection. From the northernmost point of the Persian Gulf to the Strait of Hormuz, the narrowest point of this vital waterway, the region was now called Britain's Lake, a mocking term used in London for waters whose northern and southern shores were both under British control. 4 decades later, the Qajar dynasty fell. A British-backed coup placed Reza Khan Mir Panj, a soldier once trained under British advisors, on the throne. The Pahlavi monarchy began under Britain's shadow. After some time, Reza Shah seemed to forget he was Britain's man and could not act outside the boundaries of that arrangement. He moved towards building a modern army, especially a navy, a game in which one side of the board was controlled by the British minister plenipotentiary, who safeguarded Britain's interests in the Persian Gulf. In Tehran, Sir Robert Clive, the British minister plenipotentiary, sifted through confidential reports. A seasoned diplomat representing an empire that had ruled the Persian Gulf for a century. Across the negotiating table sat Abdul Hussein Teymurtash, Reza Shah's powerful court minister. The subject of discussion: the three islands, Iran's sovereignty over its southern waters, and the future of Britain's lake, a lake Iran insisted on calling the Persian Gulf. In those same years, in the waters of the Persian Gulf, another man stood on the deck of the gunboat HMS Shoreham, scanning the horizon. Captain Alan Poland, commander of the Royal Navy forces in the Persian Gulf. He held this position from 1937 to 1939. From the deck of his ship, Poland monitored every movement of Iran's small fleet and sent his reports to Whitehall. Britain was watching the activities of Iran's newly established navy with extreme attention. In Tehran, Clive wrote in his confidential notes that the Iranians were notorious for signing agreements and known for refusing to ratify them. But history tells a different story. From 1900 until that day, Britain had not honored a single treaty with the Qajars and had begun and continued the occupation of the three islands without any legal document. This time, shifting the blame onto someone else was not going to be easy. In 1932, the Imperial Iranian Navy was officially born. But this force was nothing like what Reza Shah envisioned in his dreams. 2 Babr-class gunboats named Babr or Tiger and Palang or Leopard, 4 patrol boats, and 6 small coastal craft. A fleet whose total weight was less than that of a single medium-sized British warship. And this was the entirety of Reza Shah's naval power. None of these vessels had been built in Iran, and none could be repaired inside the country. Iran still had no shipbuilding industry and had acquired none of the necessary technologies. Britain refused to sell any armed vessels to Iran. Frustrated and angered by British behavior, Reza Shah conceived a dangerous idea. To meet his naval needs, he turned to Britain's ideological rival, Mussolini's Italy, which was gradually drifting towards fascism. Italy not only built the ships, but also sent its advisors and instructors to the southern waters to train Iranian crews. This meant that Britain now faced warships whose commands were spoken not in English, but in Italian. In Whitehall, British officials sifted through the confidential reports. From the deck of the showroom, Captain Poland described Iran's fleet as small, immature, and lacking real operational capability. But this technical reassurance did not hide the strategic truth. Iran now had ships, and they came from rival Italy. It seemed the calm surface of Britain's lake was about to be disturbed. For the British, the arrival of any foreign vessel in the Persian Gulf meant a weakening of the Crown's control over the region's choke point. It seemed the calm surface of Britain's lake was about to be disturbed. For the British, the arrival of any foreign vessel in the Persian Gulf meant a weakening of the Crown's control over the region's choke point. It meant losing the Strait of Hormuz. The officials in Whitehall decided to approach the matter with some patience. Iran's navy was still not large enough to reach the Strait of Hormuz. Reza Shah's Persian Gulf squadron was anchored in the ports of Khorramshahr and Abadan, not near the strait. This was not a strategic choice, but a logistical necessity. There, at the mouth of the Shatt al-Arab, lay the deepest waters suitable for docking gunboats. There were repair facilities, warehouses, and most importantly, the region's largest oil refinery. The Babr was stationed in Khorramshahr and the Palang in Abadan. Their mission, however, was far from Reza Shah's ambitions. These two gunboats were suitable only for patrolling the northern parts of the Persian Gulf and combating smuggling. Occasionally, they escorted Iranian merchant ships and showed the flag. Controlling the Strait of Hormuz required a real navy, and Reza Shah did not have one. So the strait was not yet in danger. But suddenly, something happened that sharply escalated tensions in the Persian Gulf. Iran wanted at least to have control over Qishm Island. This island is the largest landmass in the Persian Gulf and has absolute oversight over the entrance and exit of the Strait of Hormuz. For 100 years, the British had maintained a base in the Basidu area of Qishm Island. This base, located right at the entrance of the Persian Gulf, was like a knife pressed against the throat of the Strait of Hormuz. From this position, Britain monitored the passage of all ships. Iran, however, wanted the island for itself. One morning in 1935, Admiral Ghulam Ali Bayandor, commander of the Imperial Iranian Navy, issued the order to attack from the deck of the Babr. Iran's small fleet moved towards Qishm. The attack was sudden. British forces in Basidu were caught off guard. After an hour of fighting, the tricolour flag of Iran was raised over the century-old British base. Bayandor retook the area from the British by force of arms. In Whitehall, the news exploded like a bomb. The British commander transmitted the report of the attack and awaited orders. But the order he expected, a retaliatory strike, did not come from London. The British were furious, but they knew that a military confrontation with Iran at that moment was not in their interest. So they took the matter to the Assembly of International States. They knew from experience that in such forums, power speaks first. But this became the turning point in Britain's story in the Persian Gulf. This time, they were mistaken. Muhammad Ali Foroughi, the top figure in Reza Shah's inner circle, was chosen to defend Iran's rights before the tribunal. Foroughi was a seasoned intellectual and a master diplomat who traveled to Geneva. Britain's assessment was that despite Foroughi's presence, the outcome would be easy, because he was deeply tied to Britain and was a senior member of its Masonic Lodge in Iran. They believed he was a man who might yield under Western pressure. But Foroughi presented Iran's case before the International Court of Arbitration with such solid historical and logical arguments that London suddenly found itself in an unexpected dead end. The judges unanimously ruled in favor of Iran, and the Basidu region was returned to Iranian control. Britain had no choice but to accept that it must evacuate Basidu. But this was not the end of the story. It was only the beginning of a far greater fear. In the confidential reports exchanged between Whitehall, the authorities of British India, and the political residency of the Persian Gulf, a new anxiety was emerging. If the issue of the three islands, Bahrain and the Strait of Hormuz, were ever brought before an international assembly, the ruling of the International Court of Arbitration might once again favor Iran. This was the most terrifying scenario for Britain, because if the three islands were returned to Iran, the country would effectively become the dominant power over the Strait of Hormuz. The concept of Britain's lake would collapse forever, and the lake would once again be called the Persian Gulf.
خلیج فارس، سینوس پارتیکوس، پروشاوان، 6 زبان اینجا پسوند فارسی داره. اینو نمیتونن اسم اینو عوض کنن. این جزایری که تو آنگ بود، مردم ما توش بودن. ما اصلا تو بزرگ رفته بود، نخل داشت، خونه داشت، ده 11 تا چاه داشت. مردم ما اونجا زندگی میکردن. انگلیسی ها که میان تو این جزیره مردم رو کوچ میدن.
In Tehran, after months of bargaining at the negotiating table with Temurtash, Richard Clive had reached a dead end. Every time the subject of the three islands, those that overlooked the Strait of Hormuz, was raised, Temurtash repeated the same answer. The islands are an inseparable part of Iranian territory. Clive, having lost hope in the court minister's flexibility, sent a confidential telegram to the British Foreign Office in London. His message was brief but direct. As long as Temurtash remains in charge, no agreement with Iran over the islands is possible. He is an inflexible piece on the board. London received the message. A few months after that telegram, Abdul Hussein Temurtash, the very man Clive considered the greatest obstacle to an agreement, was accused of conspiring in favor of Russia. Britain's trap worked, and Reza Shah, who valued his throne more than Iran's borders, grew suspicious of him. Temurtash was killed in prison on Reza Shah's orders by an injection of air. The year 1941 arrived, and with it, the storm that swept into Iran from the south. The Second World War had reached Iran's doorstep. In Whitehall, Clive was no longer present. He had left Tehran years earlier, and was now in Japan, witnessing the collapse of another world order. But the legacy of his policies to preserve Britain's lake in the Persian Gulf had taken on a life of its own. British warships were now approaching southern Iran, not with threats and negotiations, but with fire and gunpowder. Reza Shah's fledgling navy, the small fleet created in hopes of restoring national authority in the southern waters, was practically defenseless against Britain's war machine. Babr and Palang, the two gunboats once meant to symbolize Iran's return to the sea, were targeted in the very first hours of the conflict. The Babr was caught off guard in Khorramshahr, and the Palang in Abadan was disabled before it could even assume a combat formation. Admiral Bayandor, the same man who had raised Iran's flag over Basidu in Qeshm just a few years earlier, could not withstand the iron tide of the Royal Navy. In the first hour of the invasion, he fell in Khorramshahr, beside the very ships he had once commanded. Iran's navy, which still lacked a cohesive command structure and operational experience, had no chance of resisting a coordinated assault from land, air, and sea. Key ports fell one after another. The small Iranian fleet disintegrated within minutes. The Strait of Hormuz, the golden choke point over which Reza Shah had dreamed of asserting sovereignty, fell under full British occupation. Its security was now defined not in Tehran, but in London. Yet, what happened in 1941 was not merely a military occupation. It marked the end of the dream of building an independent naval power in Iran. And perhaps the bitter irony of history lies right here. Reza Shah, the soldier who had once risen to power through a London-backed coup, was now deposed and exiled by those same British forces. His fleet lay sunk in the harbours. The three islands remained under occupation, and the Strait of Hormuz, the very choke point he longed to control, was once again the gateway to Britain's lake. All that remained was the question whispered years earlier in the closed rooms of the royal palace. Would colonial powers ever allow Iran to dominate the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz?